I knew I would forget, and I did. So recording now. So the little pictures of telephones means folks are joining by phone. We also have something at the bottom. If you're looking on your computer, you have a little feature called chat, a chat feature. Feel free to use that at any time if you want to have a conversation with us or raise a question. Feel free to use that chat feature. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so at any time, please do feel free to stop us as we go through this. So it's more of a conversation than just a monologue. And you should be able to unmute yourself. If you're looking at in terms of how to do that, take a look at the bottom. In the bottom far left, you can mute and unmute yourself, or you can click on the little picture of the microphone on the bottom left of your screen, okay? So with that, does anybody have any questions about the technology before we get started? All right, and then I need to introduce some people because I almost forgot. So I'm going to introduce Mark Durgan, who you already know, and thank Mark very, very much for his time putting all of this together. Anything you want to say, Mark?
No, I just welcome everybody, and like I said, we will be recording these so that we will have these for posterity, and also for those who aren't able to attend, so that they can also follow back with this. So just welcome everybody, and thank you for joining today.
Great, and I also want to introduce our partner, Alex Greenland.
Hi.
So Alex is the developer of the webinar, and he'll be leading some webinars going forward, so he wanted to have a chance to meet you all. You know Ellen Kagan, of course. She was in the adaptive leadership training, the Harrisburg training. Our Mechanicsburg folks haven't had the pleasure of meeting Ellen yet. So this is Ellen, and you will have a chance to meet her, we hope. We also have some members of our training team on the call. We have Ann Catania Lynn is on, Mary Garrett Eiten, Dwaneen Hicks, and Sherry Peters. So we're very happy to have our team on and look forward to having this conversation with you. All right, I'm going to share the screen now. I'm going to get rid of my picture of me and share my screen and walk through the webinar. Let's see. Okay. All right, so our outcomes of our Coach Approach conversations. And you remember we talked about a number of things we were trying to accomplish as we shared the Coach Approach training with you, our 2-day training. First and foremost, of course, is building our interpersonal skills. And you remember we talked a lot about the importance of interpersonal skills and particularly presence. And you may remember that I said, of all the skills that are most important, presence is the most important skill. And so one thing I'll be interested to hear as we go along is how you've been doing with your presence, what you've been noticing about your presence. Another thing you may remember that I said was the other most important skill for us to be developing is the ability to listen and ask questions, asking questions. So rather than advising and telling, a lot about the Coach Approach is asking. We're always about strengthening others. So, so, so important. You know, there's a wonderful Google study that just came out about the most important quality that a team leader can provide. And the most important quality, according to this Google study, is creating psychological safety. Creating psychological safety. And just inviting folks to mute themselves if they're not speaking. So creating psychological safety is hugely, hugely impactful. How do we create trust? How do we let other people feel supported? How do we strengthen others? How we interact with folks in the workplace really makes a difference in terms of how we see ourselves. Improving relationships, important to all of us all the time. We talk about leading adaptive change. the idea of making sure that we can be adaptive leaders living in complexity and SCARF and VUCA. We'll talk about SCARF and VUCA in a moment. But in leading adaptive change, we want to be sure that we have the skills that allow us to lead in complexity. And we also talk about improving collaboration across system partners. So one of the important pieces with the systems of care is to make sure that we have good collaboration across all the different partners that we have in the system. And our hope is, and I think we found this in Mechanicsburg, our hope is, and I think in Harrisburg as well, that as partners are together across the system, as we all have the skill sets and the mindsets of coach approach, we can really have much better relationships with each other and collaboration. Okay. All right, so SCARF and VUCA. Now, SCARF and VUCA, you remember from SCARF and VUCA that SCARF is status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And you may remember that we had quite a number of conversations about SCARF, and we even talked about getting our SCARF snagged as our status was threatened, or maybe it was our autonomy that was threatened, or perhaps we found something was unfair. And hopefully you remember, and you can nod to me if you remember, the monkey video, where the monkey that did the same task as the monkey next to it got a cucumber instead of a grape, and the reaction of the monkey. And the monkey kind of slammed the table a few times and actually threw the cucumber back at the experimenter because the monkey wasn't treated fairly. So SCARF, from what David Rock said, these are things we are hardwired to be looking out for. And you may remember that we said that we default to threat. We default to threat. So if the choice is, oh, this thing happened, how do I want to interpret it? Is it a positive thing or is it a threat? Because we protect ourselves, we default to threat. We are always looking for threats to our status, to our certainty, to our autonomy, to our relatedness, and to our fairness. Makes it very difficult then to lead, right? It makes it very difficult to lead because we have to be attuned that other people are going to be understanding what we're saying, looking for threats. And we said that there's the world, though, and this is the parallel that we're drawing, the world, though, is VUCA. The world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So we're saying that the role of the leader is to help people thrive in a VUCA world, even though our minds are wired for SCARF. And we're saying that a coach approach is a solid way of doing this. As we take a coach approach in working with folks, we're attending to their SCARF in a VUCA world. Oh, let me go back. We talked about two things with the coach approach. We have a coach approach mindset and a coach approach skill set. We condense the mindset to what we think are the really key points. Our mindset from a coach approach perspective is to meet people where they are and respect their who-ness. We call it their who-ness, the who people are, their gifts, their skills, all that they know, and really demonstrate respect for all of that. And to know that there's often more than one right answer. We talked about our colleague Monica McCall, who had a line out her door every day when she'd come in from the parking lot, she'd come into her office, she'd see a line out her door, and she'd spend her first hour or so at work answering questions that people brought. And all day, people would be coming to her for answers. What Monica learned and cleared her hallway with was that there's often more than one right answer, and people have oftentimes the answers themselves. Now, of course, sometimes there is only one right answer, and we're saying if there is one right answer, by all means, share that. It's not a guessing game that we're trying to create here. However, we all said in the training that probably, 90% of the time, there is more than one right answer, more than one way of doing something. And we have the opportunity to build other people's competence and confidence and certainty as they're able to answer their own questions, as we ask them questions rather than telling them the answer. We also, in this mindset, intend to strengthen others and build their independence just in that way. And we model deep respect and trust for others in this mindset. And we know that sometimes when we protect people, we inadvertently keep them from growing. We may think, oh, it's faster to tell them the answer, or I don't want them to have to struggle. But this is the way people learn. This is the way people learn. So our coach approach mindset is we are always strengthening others. How can I strengthen others? And we'll talk more about this as we go along. So this is a good place to stop and just see if there are any questions so far. Anybody have any experience they would like to share? And if you do, please do unmute yourself. Anybody have anything to share?
Hello.
Hi. Is this
Dwayne?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I think what jumps out to me most in this one is the knowing there is often more than one right answer, which is a lesson that I had to learn, in that always assuming that there's one answer and hoping everybody gets to that answer. But, and like I've said before, it's just being the opening that it creates to saying, you know what, there may be more than one right answer, and we'll get to a place that maybe I don't see, but it's still a good place to get to, and kind of informing on, just opening up the world to many other possibilities. So I appreciate that. I didn't know how to put that into words, but that is really a good way of saying that there's just more than one right answer. You don't have to key in on one thing, because that's where your mind goes.
Great. Great. Thanks, Dwanine. And oftentimes, if we get stuck on our answer, then we can really lose the opportunity to hear other perspectives. I know I've come into a number of situations where I thought I had the answer, and luckily, open to other perspectives, I heard other folks' answers that were much, much, much better than mine. So that idea that we have to prove something, or I don't know, that it's important for us to be right all the time, I think we can let go of that. We can let go of that, and it's helpful to us. Anybody else have anything on the mindset?
Yeah, this is Anne. I just was thinking that modeling deep respect and trust for others, especially that trusting others, is very freeing. It's like the more I practice it, and not that I think it's not that I didn't trust before, it's just, it's a different level of trust, of letting go of some of the things that, and, again, people usually rise beyond what I've expected. And that's kind of like, when I say, I trust your judgment, and, what do you think? And that actually helps them. It seems the feedback that I've gotten is that they're more thoughtful about what they're doing because of kind of that being handed over to them. It's sort of not giving them an accountability, but just as having them feel more empowered. So I really like that, and I've tried to really focus on practicing that more.
Great. That's great, Anne. The idea, just saying to someone, I trust your judgment, how reinforcing is that, right? It's beautiful. I trust your judgment. What do you think? Great. Anybody else? All right, well, we'll keep rolling. So,
I have one.
go ahead.
I was trying to get to my unmute button. This is Keith Graybill.
All right, hi, Keith.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a funky, yeah, there you are. Yes.
That better?
Yep, that's good, perfect.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have not a camera on my screen.
That's okay, we can hear you just fine.
What's going on with the state? But anyhow, I have an example I could share. It's kind of in the context of a conflicted situation.
Uh-huh.
So I guess I'll just share it. Hopefully it's appropriate. I'm actually trying to practice some of the things I'm learning in a course that I'm taking on transformational conflict. And I don't think I did that well, except I don't think I dropped into a hole that I would have more trouble extricating myself from. But at any rate, this is in the context of a faith-based educational situation. I am in a position of authority in this setting, and a person who has some authority at an educational level was approached. Found out that a person that she was responsible for bypassed an instructor assistant, and this instructor chose their own person to replace them for a setting this past Sunday. And I was approached as kind of the authority, like this is a problem. There's conflict actually going on as it is, and I think I was approached to fix it. And that's one of the powerful things about this coach approach that I find really powerful, is it switches us from being fix-it people into helping other people fix their own problems. So I knew right away that I could easily get triangled into this situation, and this person didn't think they could call and confront the individual. So I said, I think we're just going to let this play out. We're going to let that unauthorized substitute instructor carry out what they were asked to do. It's a last minute thing, and we'll see how things work out. And we don't know the whole situation, why this person didn't choose the designated assistant. So this still is an unresolved situation yet. But I find out yesterday that the instructor was very, very ill and didn't go to work for the last couple of days before this. This person is not an individual who usually misses work. So there's other things that play into this, and I'm hoping to be able to use this as a learning moment. And I'm just reminded I'm going to have to go back to this individual approach to me and do some coaching rather than making suggestions.
Yeah, great. That's great, Keith. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
That. Yeah, we like to think that we can use the coach approach on an ongoing basis in all kinds of situations. And, you remember from the training, we had lots of opportunity for long conversations, but we're not imagining that it takes a long time to use the coach approach. So we wanted to just remind you of the coach approach in 5 minutes, and just some questions you can ask back when someone comes to you with a question. And the first one is, what options do you see? What options do you see? So someone comes up to you with a question, rather than answering it, what options do you see? Or what do you think is best? And then just see what the person's come up with. I'd be surprised if most of the time the person's coming to you with they have an idea. They already have an idea. And by you turning it back to them, they can share that idea. They just want confirmation. Now, every now and again, they really won't know or won't have a clue. And we're not saying, oh, well, in that case, just keep pushing them. No, I mean, you can answer the question if that serves them the most. Again, that we suggest that that's your second response. First response, ask them back. What options do you see, or what do you think is best? You could ask them what might get in the way of the plan that they have, or what do you think the next step should be? And how can I support you? So that could be a quick 5-minute conversations. What options do you see? What might get in the way? How can I support you? And that's it. And what you'll find is over time, they will be answering their own questions before they even come to you. We talked about the skill set a lot. You remember the presence and centering, and I'm hoping to hear when we pause again to hear from y'all that you're using your presence and your centering, and you're finding that being present really makes a difference. We're saying that being present and centered can change all of your conversations. And you remember as we practice this, and we'll talk more about this, listening, certainly, having that engaged listening, clarifying, asking good questions, discussing feedback in a positive way that allows the feedback to strengthen others, and creating accountability, holding people accountable. And then remembering always that we're modeling. One of the things that I shared in the training is whether we like it or not, we are always modeling behavior. People who report to us, people who are working with us are watching us, they're seeing us, and it's a missed opportunity if we don't take into full awareness how we are modeling behavior all the time. What behavior do you want to model? So we invite you to consider the coach approach skills. I'm going to walk through them each individually just to remind you. First, presence. We made a big deal about presence, and you remember from the not listening activity what it felt like when people weren't present with you. We say to be present, take a deep breath and focus your attention. It doesn't have to be a long piece, but just feet on the floor. Maybe you want to do that right now. Put your feet on the floor. Just connect with that. Notice what it feels like to settle. Notice what it feels like to find your breath. We say that intention follows attention. Intention follows attention. Use the example in the training of how many times have we sent off an email without thinking, or responded, yeah, to someone who is asking us a question, only to realize that we hadn't been paying attention to what they were saying. And to note that if we don't have the time or energy to be present, wait or reschedule for another time. Oftentimes in the training, we talked about just how busy we all are and how difficult it is sometimes to just be taking care of everything we have going on. And so when someone comes to us, we might think we can multitask. We know from studies we can't. A number of you have said, when someone comes to your door and you are in the middle of something, you'll ask them, can you give me a minute to finish? And then I can give you my full attention. We all, I think, practiced in the training, had that experience of what the conversation was like when we gave each other our full attention, how much it meant, right? How much it meant and what we made of it when we didn't get someone's full attention. The stories we told ourselves. If you're distracted, if you're not giving me your full attention, then gosh, I must not mean that much to you. I must not be that important to you. That's powerful, right? That's powerful. That's not the intention we want to convey. And presence takes constant practice. I've been teaching it for years. I'm still practicing all the time. Presence takes constant practice. I think I told you all my story of my student who gave me that very biting feedback at the party, that he didn't believe anything I was saying about presence because at the party when I was talking to him, I wasn't giving him my full attention. Presence takes constant practice. And we're none of us perfect. We're not going to be perfect. And it matters. So how can we be more present? So again, I'm going to, actually, I'm going to hear now. Let's do that. Let's just hear now. If you want to talk about how you've been doing with your presence, this is such an important one. Anyone want to chime in on what you've been noticing about your presence and the difference that it makes? And do remember to unmute yourself if you'd like to say something. Anybody have any presence stories?
This is Mark, and I think I think I might have said this kind of in the training that we just did in last month, and it really goes back to that second statement that you have there, and it does work when you're not in the moment, when you're not there, and your mind is just not in it. Is advising the other person that, hey, I'm not here, or I'm really distracted right now. Do you want to wait a little bit till I'm a little bit better, or back in the moment, or is this something really we need to go over and I can kind of take that minute to try to get there, but know that I'm distracted. So I think it's just it's part of that relationship piece of things where you can start to have those conversations, and I think it's about that honesty piece of really kind of being open of where you are in those conversations.
Yeah, great, Mark. I think that's great. And I think people really appreciate that. They really appreciate it when you say, this is not a good time. I'll need you to come back because I want to give you my full attention. Great, great. And this is, I think, we say this is at the core of it. This is at the core. We can't listen unless we are present. Sometimes presence is all you need. Just being present can make a difference as we demonstrate our care and concern for the people who we're talking with. All right, listening. Well, we all remember this one, I think, because we all had a lot of fun with listening badly, that practice in listening badly. And some of us are fix-its. I think if we were to do a poll, most of us would say we are fix-it people. We've been trained to fix it. We're good at fix-it. Being good problem solvers and fix-it people really got us to where we are. And there's a downside to it, right? Because oftentimes we fix problems way too soon without hearing all the information. So we're fixing the wrong problem. And our solution isn't necessarily the solution that's going to work best. You remember self-referential, this is making the conversation all about me. So you talk about your situation and I come in and say, well, wait a second, that reminds me just of something about me. And I pull all the energy away from the conversation, not helping you with your problem or your situation or asking you questions, but talking about myself. And the superficial, of course, we just talked about a little bit, this idea that I can multitask or I don't need to really listen to you. And then we said engaged listening is really what we're looking for. Really giving the person our full attention, making comfortable eye contact, being aware of cultural differences and what's appropriate culturally, listening underneath the meaning of what's said, watching body language and cues, really giving that person our full attention, making sure we're understanding. And I shared with a number of you one of my favorite quotes from a colleague of mine, that being listened to can feel a lot like being loved. Being listened to can feel a lot like being loved. We're not listening to respond. We're not listening to react. We're not listening to solve. We're listening to understand. We're listening to learn. Clarifying, such an important skill, and many of you social worker types had this training in your social work school, right? This is the active listening, paraphrasing, very, very useful skill, and I would say really underutilized skill. I mean, it's really easy when someone's talking to say, oh, I understand, sure, I understand. But the person who's speaking doesn't know you're understanding, unless you're clarifying, unless you're playing it back, restating, repeating the person's words as best as you remember, summarizing key points. You all remember in the coaching, as we did the coach approach demo, and in your practices, right? When you ask someone what's going on, they'll come in with a whole paragraph often of issues, concerns, and tricky sometimes to clarify the focus, that very first point, what's really going on? And this skill can really, really help. So of all the things you've talked about, it sounds like the most important thing is this. Do I have that right? Do I have that right? And we said, let's not get ahead of folks. So not put words in their mouths as they talk about what they're going through. We want to reflect where they are. And then looking for what we're sensing behind the words, and to share what we're seeing without saying, oh, I see you are angry. You might say something like, well, it sounds like there's a lot of this is frustrating for you. Is that right? Am I reading that correctly? This is one that really lets people know that we're hearing them and we're checking. And they may say, no, actually, that's not how I'm feeling, or it's a different emotion, or no, you've got that wrong. And that's great, because then we understand. This is a super, super helpful skill. And then asking questions, asking good questions, asking powerful questions. The difference between have you tried doing it this way to what we're suggesting, coach approach questions. What have you tried? What could you try? Or a judgment, isn't that awful? What just happened? Instead, how does that make you feel? Or how might that make you feel looking forward? Who should you go talk to? How might you prepare yourself for a conversation? And there's my favorite words you remember from the training, why, right? We said, watch it when you're asking why. So why are you angry? Why did you do that? Right? And we're saying that the why, when you start a sentence with why, you often will get a defensive response. And part of the reason for that is you're really asking people to defend themselves. When you ask them a question that starts with why. Defend yourself. Why did you do that? Instead, try this. What are you going to do differently next time? What are you going to do differently next time? Okay. And then offering feedback. Now, just to be clear, we're not saying in every conversation there's feedback. In every conversation, there's certainly presence. In every conversation, there's listening and clarifying. In almost every conversation, there could be very good asking good questions. Feedback is going to come not every single time you have a conversation with someone, but hopefully often, as we recognize that supportive feedback is one of the most important things we can offer people. And we make a big deal about this. How do we give feedback from a coach approach, right? So one thing we say is the intent of feedback is always to help people be more effective. And we let people know, I'm going to give you feedback. You're going to get lots of feedback, and most of it's going to be positive. I'm going to catch you doing things right. And if there's something that I think can help you be more effective, I'm going to tell you. You never have to worry about how I feel about you, because I'm always going to tell you. And that can build that certainty and that trust. When we give feedback, we want to focus on behavior and not the person, right? So we're using behavioral terms. When you had that conversation with your colleague, I could tell your colleague was really upset, but you used such carefully chosen words. Your voice was calm, your tone was calm. That de-escalated the whole conversation. Great job. Rather than, oh, you did a great job. Right? So focusing on the behavior, as much positive as possible. Catch them doing something right, as we said before. And this is one, remember we had the conversation in the coaching training, in our coach approach training, where we asked you to give positive feedback to someone you knew well. And for many of us, getting that much positive feedback is challenging. It's a muscle we need to build. We're modeling our openness to positive feedback. We also know, and probably talked about this, that some people we say are cactuses or cacti, and some people are ferns in terms of how much feedback we need. The cactus people among us don't need a whole lot of feedback or water, right? And it can seem like too much. The fern people among us, and I'm one of them, can't get enough positive feedback. We'll go after, how did I do? Was that okay? What did you think? So going after the positive feedback. I think one of the tricks here is to notice that if I'm a cactus and you're a fern, that is, if I don't need positive feedback and you do, I have to be careful not to judge you. I have to be careful not to judge you. You shouldn't need feedback. Well, I do. I do. So to really know what people need, we also often ask too, I ask in the session, how many of you get enough positive feedback? And I think in all 3 trainings of all the cohorts on the call, maybe 5 hands went up. So we all can do better at giving positive feedback and receiving positive feedback by just saying thank you. And when we're offering feedback, and we think someone could do something better, perhaps we can ask them first, how do you think that went? How do you know? Let people give themselves feedback. We might say, this is what I saw. What did you notice? Again, we want to give people a chance to give feedback to themselves, just like David Rock said. Creating accountability is important too. And we talked about this opportunity with a coach approach to let people know that we're going to follow up. And it confirms the importance of what they said they were going to do. Remember, we ask folks, what can you commit to? We're going to let people know we will hold them accountable. And we want to be flexible and supportive when people and situations change. We want to encourage and celebrate successes and be curious about failures, right? Because the failure means we have an opportunity to learn what needs to change. So the coach approach is really a go forward approach. We don't focus a lot on the past. We focus more on what can we learn, what can be different, what can we work together on going forward, what do we need to change to be successful. So in summary, and you may remember this slide, we are present, we are focused, and we are listening to understand and build status and relatedness. We want to be asking questions to build critical thinking skills to help the person build autonomy. This is connecting at the scarf. We offer mostly positive feedback, building certainty and relatedness. And we're open to other perspectives, taking the balcony view to encouraging feedback to build fairness. So we know that because we're wired for SCARF, because it's a VUCA world, as leaders, as colleagues, as collaborators, we need to be really thoughtful about how we communicate. And Ellen Kagan on the call loves this quote. She wanted us to be reminded of it. So Viktor Frankl, who was, many of you know, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he was imprisoned in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany for a number of years, and managed to find that in that experience that he had way more power than his captors. And this is what he said: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And we feel like as we're present, we can really open up that space between what happens and how we respond. So going forward, we invite you, your first reaction to be to ask questions, to make time and take time to be present, to hold yourself and others accountable, celebrate successes, and practice and model the coach approach every day as much as you can. Work home, and see what changes. And so with that, I'm going to stop, inviting you to take the rest of our time together, the next 5 minutes, to share what you've been doing to use the coach approach mindset and skill set, what's worked, what questions do you have? So opening it up to you. And do unmute yourself if you want to talk. Ellen, go ahead.
For those of you out there, I wanted to say that on Wednesday, during our community of practice learning circle, we'll also have a chance to answer these questions and to delve into it a little bit more on your experiences, both positive or things that you feel like have gone well, and some situations that may feel very sticky that you'd like to use it. And we'll be seeing how we can use each other to encourage more opportunities to use the coach approach.
Yeah, great. Great. Other folks who want to chime in. We've got a lot of folks on the call. Would love to hear from some of you. What have you noticed? What's working? What's not working?
Hiya, this is Wendy.
Hi.
Hey, Wendy.
Hi. So let's see there.
There you are.
So I've been working with a team of people that I made an assumption that they were where I was with my mindset on some really big concepts. And I wrote something and everybody sort of freaked out because they weren't where I was at this sort of more subtle, refined level of, not refined, but a more complex level of thinking than we normally get to. So I really had to, first of all, disengage from feeling really attacked and vulnerable and disliked. I took it really personally. And then I realized everybody else was taking it really personally. So it was a really mindful, slow listening process that I needed to take to find out where they really were, because my assumption of where everybody was so incorrect and really threatened people. So it was really a bunch of people that I work real closely with. I thought we were all on the same page and we were diametrically opposed. And it was really, it took me a couple days of pacing around and being really huffy and angry till I could disengage from, that it was really about listening, and it wasn't about status necessarily, but I did put everybody in that, is it Varga? The other side. I put everybody, I put everybody in that world really intensely without realizing that I could even do it. So it was interesting, but we're moving along and we're clarifying.
Oh, good. Great, Wendy. Yeah, it's a learning process. Thanks. Someone else.
I can just mention something real briefly. I think I had the pleasure of talking to Ellen this morning, and we were just going over a couple of things related to the trainings and some other things. And I guess it was really started off with, I'm just going to vent about this one topic, and then I'll get into the topic that I can solve, because the other one's totally out of my hands, and just there's no resolution. It is what it is. And through that conversation that we had, which really just allowed her, first off, to really kind of get me centered, and then having the conversation of just having her ask some open-ended questions to kind of get me there. And at one point I was very stuck. And it's really kind of looked at that idea which you had talked about in some of the beginning slides, which is kind of that idea. It's at 80-20. So it's like 80% of it is really asking those questions and not guiding, but 20% of it sometimes is not necessarily giving you should go this route, but that idea of what if this happened, what if this happened, what if this happened. So giving a few options and not really kind of putting weight on any single one of them. And through that conversation, it really helped me to kind of problem solve this thing that I thought had no issue or no solution, because I was going to talk about the other thing. So it was nice to be able to have that kind of thought pattern of the silence almost on the other end as you kind of walk through it. And the silence is tough, because you have to start to think and talk. But it was overall, I think from it was some good action steps that I was able to develop. There is some things that are still out of my control, but the things that are in my control, it will help me to kind of empower the other people as well. So.
Great. Great. Well, we're true believers. I think you know this about us. So inviting you all to Ellen's community of practice call on Wednesday. Anything else you wanted to say about that, Ellen, before we sign off the webinar?
No, I think the questions that you ended with, Beth, are really good questions for people to be reflecting upon as we go into that conversation.
Great. So we're really grateful to you for being part of this community of practice. Our hope and intention is that as more and more people go through this training, this group will get bigger and bigger. We'll be doing regular webinars, having regular conversations, having regular practice opportunities. So you can really take advantage of a coach approach both at work and at home. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Mark, you have one more thing to say.
Yeah, one quick thing. We had one question on the slides. Will the slides be shared with the group? And I think that we should be able to do that. And we will have, if you go into the PA Care Partnership website, www.pacarepartnership.org, and look under training, there's a Coach Approach tab. So we will be putting in the webinars there, I think the slides, and there's actually some nice descriptions now of the coach approach that you can that if you're trying to share the information and be able to kind of talk about it effectively, we have that in there as well. So
great. Thanks, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you and hearing you on Wednesday.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye. And team, stay on, please. I think Ellen, oh, there's Ellen. Okay. So a few people still, I got a few folks who are still on who are not part of the team, but that's okay. They may just have walked away from their phones.
And you're still recording, so I don't know if you want to.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Gosh, you're saving me.